Hello, folks. Thank you very much for joining me, and welcome to a short session that we've put together today to mark Carers' Rights Day, the 20th of November 2025. Firstly, apologies. This session was, of course, originally meant to be a free webinar that we were supposed to be doing earlier in the week. Unfortunately, that wasn't able to go ahead. So what I've done is I've kind of reworked this session a little bit. You will either get this privately if you've booked onto that session beforehand, or it will also be going out as part of our monthly newsletter as well. And the reason that I'm talking about carers' rights today, I don't mind saying, is because I'm a carer myself. It's something that's quite close to my heart, so forgive me. It's something I want to get on my soapbox about just a little bit. So before we get into it, just in case this is your first time joining us, hello, first of all. My name is Gareth. I am one of the trainers here at Society Matters, and I'm going to be taking you through this short session today, just for the next sort of 15, 20 minutes or so. Now, before we get into it, again, just in case this is your first time here with me, if I may give you just a little bit of background about myself and about us at Society Matters, kind of who we are and what we do. So, Society Matters is the trading subsidiary of Citizens Advice Gateshead, actually one of the largest citizens advice in the country. But we are a trading subsidiary and we are a KIC, community interest company. So, what I do day to day is we deliver a range of courses on various different social welfare issues. So, it could be on carers like this now, for instance. It could be the welfare system or individual benefits. It could be debt, immigration, housing, access to work. It's citizens' advice. So if you can think of it, then we probably cover it. And we do try and feed the knowledge and the experience that we have as kind of frontline advisors, if you like, into courses and webinars like this. But what's unique about us is that all of the profits that we make from those courses ultimately get gifted back to the charity to kind of fund the various projects that it has and enable our advisors to do the wonderful work that they do. And on the screen there is just some of the organisations that we are very proud to support and to work alongside. So, what am I going to be talking about for the next 20 minutes or so? Well, firstly, like I say, it's all things carers' rights. So, just to give us a bit of context, I want to kick things off thinking about what is the landscape like at the moment for carers in the UK, just to give us a bit of just to set the scene a bit, if you like. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what barriers carers face, particularly in relation to employment, and crucially, what support is available, because there have been some changes to that in the last sort of year or so, in particular, last year and a half thereabouts. We will also talk about what support is available to carers as well in terms of finances, so from the welfare state, or whether that's things like charitable grants and charitable assistance. I do also want to spend a bit of time as well talking about support for young carers, in particular, the impact that caring can have on young people, and again, crucially, what support is available for young carers specifically. And then lastly, if I am a carer, where can I go for that support? What kind of extra resources, extra help is out there? So just to kick things off, and like I said, just to kind of set the scene a little bit, we've just got some stats on the screen there. So the most recent census in 2021 found that there are 5.8 million unpaid carers in the UK. Now that's from 2021. And given things like COVID and so on, and long COVID, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if that number was a bit higher by that point, to be frank. There was a survey published in the last few months, which I do recommend taking the time to read if you find yourself with time on your hands. The Carers UK State of Caring survey found that nearly half of carers they surveyed had cut back on essentials. A third had taken out a loan, used a credit card, or an overdraft. We talk a lot about things like the cost of living crisis and kind of like how we're maybe through the worst of it is sort of the perception that some people have. Okay, but nearly half of carers have cut back on essentials. A third of them are using things like loans and credit cards just to get by. What does that say about the financial resilience of carers and how they cope with that cost of living crisis? The GP patient survey of 2025 found that 72% of carers reported a physical or mental health condition that they expected to last longer than 12 months. So you are caring for someone with a health condition or a disability. Now that comes with challenges all in its own right. I don't mind saying I'm a carer myself. I get it. But also there's the stress of that. Add to that, maybe you develop a health condition, physical or mental health condition in your own right. What option do you have? So many people will just try and sort of grin and bear it. Well, 72% of carers. It's not a nice picture thus far. There was research done by Phoenix that suggests that carers retire what we call under-pensioned. Now, what I mean by that, just to put it into perspective, half of carers between the ages of 60 to 65 have no private pension savings of any kind whatsoever. I mean, if you're a carer, can you afford to work? Can you afford to pay into a private pension? Is that maybe a shock? If you maybe a cynic like me, maybe not. And they retire with 80% of the UK average pension income. So firstly, if they've got no private pension of any kind, they're going to be relying on things like national insurance contributions to help them get things like the state pension. That assumes that they're claiming things like carers allowance or carers credits that I'm going to talk about a bit later on. They retire with 80% of the UK average pension income. Now, Phoenix themselves said that that works out as a gap of about £37,000 that people are missing. £37,000 would make quite a difference to someone's quality of life, I imagine, particularly in retirement. So, like I said, unfortunately, it's not a very positive picture, I'm afraid. My intention is not to distress you or make you sad, but I think we're doing a disservice if we kind of shy away from the difficulties that people face. And of course, the aim of sessions like this and the work that we do more broadly is helping people sort of get the support that they're entitled to. So thinking about the challenges that carers face, particularly in relation to employment. Well, firstly, again, just to give us some perspective, according to census data, there are 3 million carers over 16 in some kind of employment, but combining a caring role with work, it is uniquely challenging. That could be maybe I need time off to take whoever I'm caring for to doctor's appointments. Maybe they've got fluctuating health conditions and they don't know what they're going to be like day to day. So I don't know what I'm going to need to be doing day to day. Maybe I'm caring for more than one person. It is uniquely challenging. But there is some support that is available. And there's two in particular that I want to focus on. Firstly, the statutory right to unpaid carer leave, and also a statutory right to request flexible working. Now, it is worth saying that these are now statutory rights. They came into law, they came into effect as of April of last year. So they are in effect right now, but if we just kind of break them down, firstly, you have the right to request flexible working under the 2024 Flexible Working Act. Now, flexible working can take many forms. So it might be you want to move to part-time, might be you want to do compressed hours, you want to do annualized hours, you want a job share, you want to do flexi time. The point of flexible working is that it's meant to be right for your circumstances. So if you are struggling with combining work and a caring role, then you could make a statutory request for flexible working under the Flexible Working Act. Now, the way that you would do that is you would speak to your employer, and firstly, you would want to make clear that yes, this is a statutory request that you are making, and things like the date of the request and so on, because there are some time frames your employer needs to be aware of. You would need to outline what kind of working pattern you would like. So again, think about, do I want to go part-time? Do I want to do compressed hours? Do I want to do flexi time, term time, whatever it might be? I will say, and a little bit later on, we're going to talk about some extra support that's available, extra resources that are out there. There's an organisation called Carers UK, and if you Google Carers UK flexible working, they have loads of really useful information about flexible working when it comes to combining a caring role. It's fantastic. Now, like I said, when it comes to making that application, you need to make clear that it's a statutory request that you're making. Think about what kind of working pattern that you would like, and as much as possible, try and perhaps anticipate any difficulties the employer might have in enacting that flexible working request. Because you'll notice, I've got in bold there, you have the right to request flexible working. That does not mean that your employer has to accept it. They can turn down the request if they can show a good business reason. So if, for example, they wouldn't be able to say, distribute the remaining work amongst other employees, or if it would lead to a kind of additional burdens on other employees. So when we are making that request, what you may find beneficial is to kind of try and anticipate what kind of issues might my employer have with this, and what can I do to try and head that off, if you like. But you do absolutely have the right to request flexible working. Separately to that, as of April 2024, carers also have the right to request unpaid carer leave. Now, the clue is in the name first and foremost. It is unpaid. You will not be paid while you take unpaid carer leave. You are entitled up to 5 days per year. And if you care for more than one person, I'm afraid it is just 5 days. So if I'm caring for maybe elderly mum and elderly dad, it's not that I get 5 days for elderly mum, 5 days for elderly dad. It's that I get 5 days a year unpaid carer leave to help me manage my caring responsibility. Now, again, we need to make that request to our employer. Doesn't need to be in writing itself, but at Citizens Advice, we would generally recommend it just so you have a paper trail, if you like, for want of a better phrase. If your employer does turn down the request for unpaid carer leave, well, strictly speaking, they can't turn it down, but what they have to do instead is offer you an alternative date for you to take that leave, and it must be within 30 days of when you first requested it, if they are turning it down. But again, you do absolutely have this right, this statutory right to 5 days unpaid carer leave each year. What about then the financial support that is available to carers? Well, there's been research that shows, and personally, if I'm being a cynic again, I would say this maybe isn't a big shock. Being out of work is the single biggest predictor of poverty. I know, pick your jaws up off the floor. Um, in terms of the UK welfare system, when it comes to carers, there are 3 types of financial support that I'm going to focus on briefly. Firstly, and maybe the most well known, is carers allowance. Carers allowance is a benefit that you can claim if you are caring for somebody who is claiming a disability benefit like attendance allowance, the middle or high rate care component of DLA, or the daily living component of PIP. And if you're caring for that person for at least 35 hours a week, you can claim carers allowance. That will get you £83.30 per week. Now, it's not much. It's not. Per hour, it works out as about £2.38 per hour, but it is the system that we have. At the very least, we can say it's better than nothing. Separately to that, we also have the carers element of universal credit. So universal credit, it's a benefit available to people who are maybe unemployed or in low paid work. It comprises different elements that you can get depending on the person's circumstance. And one of those, if you are a carer, is something called the carers element of universal credit. It is worth £201 a month on top of whatever other elements of UC you might be entitled to. But the carers element itself is worth £201 a month. And again, to be eligible for that, you need to be caring for a disabled person for at least 35 hours a week. They need to be claiming a disability benefit like a daily living component of PIP, or attendance allowance, or the middle or the high rate care component of DLA for children. The last one is carers credits. Now, I've got a bit of an asterisk next to carers credits because carers credits, strictly speaking, it's not financial support. There isn't money associated with carers credits. The clue is kind of in the name. Carers credits gets you the national insurance contributions, the national insurance credits that would go towards things like your state pension entitlement. So, for example, to get your full amount of your state pension, you need 35 years worth of national insurance contributions, whether that's from work or from benefits, so things like carers credits. Now, to be eligible for carers credits, you need to be caring for somebody for at least 20 hours a week. So if I'm caring for somebody for less than 20 hours a week, I wouldn't get anything, I'm afraid. If I'm caring for somebody between 20 and up to 35 hours a week, so more than 20 but less than 35 hours a week, I can get carers credits. So with carers credits, I will get the credits on my national insurance record that go towards things like my state pension. I won't get any money though. That's why it's carers credits. And if it's 35 hours or more, that's when I'd want to apply for carers allowance instead. And with carers allowance, you get that £83.30 a week and the national insurance credits as well. Alongside that, though, thinking about financial support, I would also recommend places like there's an organisation called Turn to Us, have a fantastic, what they call a grant search tool. You can pop in some information about a person's circumstances, so your age, your postcode, and it will ask for circumstances like, it'll ask things like, did you maybe used to work in a particular field? Are you maybe a particular religion? Are you a carer? And what that grant search tool does is it will actually look for specific grants that are available to you based on your area and your circumstances specifically. You could also look at places like Carers Trust, Carers Fund. That there's various different routes that are available when it comes to charitable assistance and carers. Now, like I said, I want to spend just a little bit of time thinking about young carers, because young carers, I always think get an especially a rough deal, if you'll pardon the expression. There's all kinds of research that shows that if you are a young carer, so I mean sort of children and young people, there are absolutely cases where a 10-year-old child might be a carer, as heartbreaking as that might sound. There's all kinds of research that shows that unfortunately they are more likely to be persistently absent from education. They are far more likely to achieve lower GCSE, A-level grades. They are much less likely to go on to university. And because of all of that, all of those factors combining together, they are much less likely to earn, or more likely, sorry, to earn less in later life as a result of all of those factors sort of compounding together. Young carers especially are facing a especially difficult set of circumstances. Now, when it comes to supporting young carers, one thing that is going to be absolutely essential for that young carer is going to be something called the Young Carers Assessment. So this is available from your local authority. It's going to be a local authority that you want to speak to. But to be clear, it is not the same assessment that adult carers will have. Young carers assessment, what they will do is they will look at that young person's kind of whole life holistically, if you like. They will think about, okay, what do you like to do for fun? How can we help you keep doing that? How can we help you have more time for going out, going swimming, going to the gym, going to the cinema, seeing your friends, whatever it might be? What about school? How are you managing your school work? Do you want to go to college? Do you want to go to university? You know, do we need to put some kind of support in place to help you manage that? What about looking for work? Do you know what kind of work you want to do? Do you know what qualifications you might need? How can we support you with that? It's about looking at this person's life, if you like, as a whole, and thinking about what can we do to help them live as full a life as possible beyond, if you'll pardon the expression, just caring. And I do use that term loosely. It might even be a discussion of, do you want to be a carer? Because they might not want to, and that's fine too. It's their life. But the young carers assessment will look at that whole picture, if you like. Now, when it comes to additional support for carers, so there are some resources that are available on the screen. I'm not sure if you'll be able to click them directly from the slide, but if you're watching this recording, I mean, what you could do is quite simply just pause it now and just type those addresses into your search bar, or just Google it. So first up, I mentioned a little bit earlier, Carers UK do have some fantastic information that's available about managing caring and work, combining the two together. It covers things like returning to work or thinking of taking a break from work, the flexible working that we talked about earlier. You'll find all kinds of information on there. We've also got a link to that Turn to Us grant search tool that I mentioned earlier on. It's a fantastic resource, but there are other places available. Think about things like Carers UK, the Carers Fund, potentially the Family Fund. There's various different routes that you can go down, but the grant search tool on Turn to Us, what it will do is it will kind of combine everything and look at various different types of support, sort of pull them together in one place, if you like. And then separately, we've just got a bit of information as well about what support is available for young carers specifically, bearing in mind what we have been talking about. Now, this was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, if you like, in relation to carers' rights. I will say we're very proud at Society Matters that we do offer, if it's something you're interested in, something you want to find out more about, we do offer a half-day CPD accredited course on what we call Caring and Carers Matter, or Carers and Caring Matters rather, which goes into a bit more detail than what we've talked about here. So for example, you'll see it on the screen there. So what benefits are available that we've touched on briefly here. We've talked about things like, or we'll go into more detail about carers assessments, young carers assessments, disabled facilities grants, and then we'll talk about what kind of additional support is available, all using the real life case studies and experience and examples that we have as part of the Citizens Advice Network, if you like. And if it's something you want to find out more about, you'll be able to find out more information on our website, societymatterscic.com. And apart from that, guys, that does bring us to the end of this little webinar here. So we've talked about what is the current landscape for unpaid carers. We've talked about what kind of barriers that carers face when it comes to employment and what kind of support is available. So things like your flexible working requests, your unpaid carer leave, what financial support is available. So thinking about your charitable assistance, but also your carers allowance, your carers credits, your carers element of universal credit on top of that as well. We've talked about young carers and also highlighted some resources that are available if people need some additional support. So all that is really left to say is thank you very much for joining me. Apologies the session wasn't able to go ahead as planned. That was strictly a one-off, and we'll be back to your regularly scheduled programming next month. So until then, guys, thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully I will see you again soon.